where it
It is,
seats
yeah.
15, 20 people. So, in further discussions with the city, it sounded like we did want the opportunity to have a couple of computers here, but not necessarily a full computer lab. So that's why we decided to incorporate both a TV, computer, and activities in this kind of central space here.
Well, I would like to see a printing computer uh, s- facility. My experience was I was very shocked that I do a lot of writing and my printer at home broke. And so I was looking for, I had a PDF document and I, in a 24-mile area, nobody can print a Mac document. They're not keyed for Mac. And I said, coming from Silicon Valley, I said, oh my God, this is, really not good. But anyway, the computer and the printer, I think that would be a good thing to have for us
Okay, we'll make
because you're
note of that.
starting the writing classes now at the library. Also, you need to print stuff. But
Understood.
anyway, there's one more thing uh, that I'm missing here in the community is a movie house. So I'd like to see a room where we could show movies, a projection area and a screen area and things like that. And again, you have to go far away to see a movie. Not right. But anyway, I love what you're doing and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your feedback. Um, Mr. Patton.
You know, for the longest time, we were discussing this. The senior center, it was kind of left out of the loop when we're talking about the library. Should we combine it? Should we not? Should we like do it like on a small scale and not a great job? Let's just give them a new wall, or just kind of. There were a lot of suggestions, and then some other suggestions were, should we just go like all out, like you said, raise the bar? And that's exactly what this is doing. This is definitely raising the bar, and it's just giving another reason for people to come to Imperial Beach. And I think it's fantastic. Um, I love the neutral tile. At first when I looked, I'm like, oh, hold it, the library is bright and this is neutral, but the way you explained it was perfect, and I think that really worked. Um, you mentioned exercise room, and I'd written in my notes about that, and so that's nice. There's gonna be exercise room available in a game area, and I'm sure a movie area is easy enough to put a screen. And is there gonna be a lap pool by chance? No, I'm joking. I'm
So
joking. I'm
yeah,
joking.
we did discuss that.
Oh, okay.
Not so far though.
Okay, I know I'm kind of pushing it. I like it. Can you tell me about the energy efficiency of the building, please?
Yes. So it isn't slated to be zero net energy. It isn't slated to be lead gold. We haven't had people come to us with that requirement. However, all of the buildings that we design, we have energy efficiency in mind. And a lot of our California building codes are essentially making these lead silver, lead gold buildings without even, I mean, not going through the certification process, but essentially we don't have any VOCs in any of our coatings or any of our paints. This cowl wall that we were talking about, um, it's got insulative properties. So the thermal shell for the envelope of the building is going to be energy efficient because it is now essentially mandated to be. So, and me personally, I've gone through lots of schooling on lead AP and upkeep the credentialing. Our firm stands behind that, and it's just the right way to work and to design. So, although it won't have any credentialing associated with it, it will be an energy efficient building.
And I'm going to talk about all the positives. I love it. I support this 100%. And I know maybe my colleague might, or our colleagues may have maybe other issues about money, and that definitely is an issue. Um, but I definitely support this. And maybe we talk about maintenance, daily maintenance, and that's not your department. That would be, I don't know how that's embedded in this, as well as yearly maintenance on this building. I don't know who I asked that question to.
Well, that question is going to be really important, but the other thing that we want to talk about, and I don't want to be the wet blanket. Don't get me wrong. I've always said to this council and to a lot of residents in our community that really you can judge a community on how you treat your youth and your elderly. And I've said that all along, and I think that that's really important. Um, but there are some realities, and I want to make sure we don't set false expectations. I want everyone to know that at this point in time, we don't have funding in place for this structure. The important thing was to get a plan that we can start now to go out and do some fundraising. One of the important things that we were looking at was being able to fund at least part of this through the Community Development Block Grant Program. Right now, the Community Development Block Grant Program is not a favorite program of the current administration and was not included in the budget. We'll see how that turns out. But the reality is, I think that it's going to take a lot of support from the county and the residents. There will be other programs that we need to look at. But we thought it was important that before you can get anyone to jump on board with a program and fundraise, you have to have a good plan in place. And so that's the stage that we're at now. So I just want to make sure we're not setting expectations that these are construction drawings, not to be a wet blanket at all. But what's really important is what you said. It's more than just building a building. We've got to make sure that we have the resources to maintain it properly. That's one of the challenges we have now is we have an older building and it's getting more and more difficult to maintain. I think a couple years ago, we had to treat it for termites. We try to keep things up, but it is an aged building. And in some respects, in the near future, we've got to replace our senior center. And that's why we're trying to get a good positive plan in place.
So I think that perfect for me.
Okay.
Not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but but we have a plan now, and at least the start of a plan, and I'm happy with it. Thank you.
If I could just augment that just a little bit. If you take a look at the site at the floor plan, you can see the large, the seating area and whatnot that can be divided up. And some of the research, and when we had visited some of these other community centers, those can actually be revenue generators. So those can be programmed a certain way to lease out, to do not only maybe food service, in the future for elderly, but for a lot of events and whatnot. So that can actually be programmed to generate some income, and again, just offering that sort of functionality.
And we don't have a large room in our community.
Councilmember Patton, I completely agree with what a lot of you are saying. I think that the design is awesome, and obviously this is the challenge that we have to move forward. But at least we have the ability to bring this and start shopping it in many ways, and that's what we're going to be looking for. So the one question I had is, the energy efficiency that obviously you're getting from the thermoplastic that you put in there. I mean, that's going to give a lot of natural light and a lot of warmth and so on and so forth for it. What is the durability of those panels long term? I mean, there's a challenge when you're putting in things like that, but I just want to make sure that that's something and it's obviously we'll talk about this more when we actually do a design, but just curious about the durability of those.
Yes, they are structural panels. So they've been long tested, and I can certainly provide the team with warranty information. And these are used a lot in museums. So they have been tested over time. They're not the leaky skylights that we put in 20 years ago. But yeah, these are, and I was thinking about your durability comment as well. We've talked about on the interior, kind of low maintenance on the floors so that we've got hard floors. We know that you have termites. We all have termites, but we're talking about building this out of metal studs so that we don't have that wood issue. So by no means is it completely designed, but we have been thinking about these things as we're moving along.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you. This has probably been one of the most favorite projects I've worked on, only because I worked there at one time. Nancy, I really want to thank you and your team, because you absolutely listened to the community at one of the meetings that we had. And so I just want to give the audience the assurance that as Nancy had shown this to me and our assistant city manager and Chris Helmer, we actually pretended that we were walking through this building and said, okay, this is now I've arrived here. And explain that to me. So if you would just indulge me a little bit, just walking into the place, that very first opening courtyard area for art shows, for the opportunity for many events, not many, but that too, and the proximity to the art classroom. So, and the consideration of all of the storage opportunities, because that's something that we heard repeatedly at one of our meetings, was we need storage, we need separate storage for all of the different activities that happen here. And I did want to thank Ms. Bapura for being here. I remember meeting you 2 years ago with your daughter, and you made a promise to me that you would get involved in the community. So I'd like to say that you are a woman of your word, and thank you for your very insightful comments this evening. One of that whole part of the building that goes along 8th Street, if you'll look at that kitchen area, that is, we're hoping will be a commercial kitchen area. This building was designed with an eye on the future, and that does include, perhaps at one time, this site being a nutrition site for our community, which we don't have right now in Imperial Beach. It also is, like we talked about, a revenue generation possibility. So when you're looking at all of those circles, those represent tables and chairs. The line in the middle is actually an accordion door that could be open and closed, so that the far right side of that room could be set up for computer instruction. At one time we had talked about having driver, if you get a ticket and you have to go to driver training classes, those kinds of activities can certainly happen there. So if you look at all of the components of this building, the exercise area, the private meeting rooms, these were all things that the community had asked us to consider. They wanted to have a quiet area. They wanted an area where they could view movies. So that will be a component there, screens, meeting spaces where they could confer if it was on taxes or other opportunities. And Mr. Hall, our city manager, did bring up a good point. This community lacks a large meeting space. So we were aware of that as well. In this community, if you want to have, let's say somebody in your family has passed away and you want to have a celebration of life, currently most people go to the Fleet Reserve. Well, and while I love the Fleet Reserve and I'm very glad they provide us that opportunity, maybe this is an answer to that. And that was one of the things that we were looking at as well. We did talk a little bit about that barbecue patio area. That was another consideration that the community asked us to look at. We were always cognizant again of the parking issue. It even brought up the idea that perhaps we could talk to EDCO, and on one of the busiest days at the senior center, which is the same trash day as along 8th Street, that maybe EDCO would make their trash pickup day a little bit differently. So out of those meetings, I'm going to tell you something. If you want to know something, you ask a senior, because they're way past the point of, well, I don't want to say anything. They will tell you exactly. So that now I'm getting older, I can be in that group. I'm very, very proud and pleased. So Nancy did outline more meetings that will be happening. I encourage you all to go to those meetings, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. The input that we received tonight was great. We're looking for more of that input. When we started and embarked on this journey, it was, our slogan was, we're going to dream big and we're not going to stop. So Nancy, again, thank you and your team. It's right on par with the library. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Councilmember Bragg. My only comment is that my comments are, I think in terms of option one or option two, I'd like to get more feedback from the council and even the community. I can see a standalone building and then possibly integrated. I love the fact that you're using the ivy blue. And that's something that I'd like to hear more feedback from you guys on, or really feedback from the community. So either or, it's fine. I think it's great. I guess with LEED certified and energy efficiency, I just like to have more feedback from staff really on what we're talking about and what that means. Does it mean, it's LEED certified, gold certified, you save 3% more or 4% more? Just maybe just when we start thinking about that more in terms of budget, what that actually means in terms of cost versus efficiency and savings. So that's one thing. And then number two, we set the standard at the library with solar panels, and that costs a little bit more. But the reality is, if we're going to be raising money for this, then it'd be good to know what that costs and what that saves us for the long run as well. Maybe that's something we get a grant from SDG&E for. And, so I think those types of things help us get into the grant market, because it's a super cool, groovy, efficient center that helps our groovy seniors. So, and multi-purpose. So that's just something to think about. But thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I actually looked at your portfolio of all your work you do. Love the lifeguard stations and all the things that you guys do. You guys are a great firm with great vision, and I think it fits right in with our city. And obviously, it's time to do it. Not raising expectations, and as we talked about earlier with water quality, it's not about the budget or the plan; it's about the money. And so we need to start thinking about what we're really going to be out for, and then start asking people to give us the money. So anyway, so thank you. That's all my feedback. Um, Great, we can move on then.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Appreciate it. All right, now we have item 5.2, request to implement trial period for residential parking pass on the north side of Elm Street near Mar Vista High School. City Manager Hall will give the report.
Mayor and Council, I think Ed's pulling up a quick presentation that I have, but I think that there are certain parts of this that pictures will help us to have this discussion. As you know, we've recently completed the Elm Street project near Mar Vista High School, and we are now starting to understand the traffic pattern a little bit and what's happening as people are dropping off and picking up their students. And there have been some issues raised by the community that they would like the city council to consider. So I wanted to talk to you about the process that we have should the city council want to do something with the parking program on Elm Street. What that would entail is the city council engaging our city traffic engineer to provide you with a parking program. But I wanted to make sure that we touch on some overarching issues that at least as a city manager, I want to make sure that we pass on to the city council. One is first, the safety of the students and the residents is what we're after here. That's what's most important, making sure that people are safe, especially around a school. And that's a critical issue. The parking program needs to mitigate the safety issues if implemented. You know, it's not just about implementing some kind of a parking program to say we did and checking a box. If it's not going to really make the situation safer, then we probably shouldn't engage in it because, again, moving on to the third one, and that is this issue unique enough that we should be putting in a parking program? I think that the parking issue in Imperial Beach is something that you guys hear every day, everywhere you go. And is this the slippery slope where some other people now say, well, gee, I'd like a parking program in my neighborhood or next to my house? So we want to make sure that we're doing this for a purpose. And so I wanted to talk about some of the things that are happening on Elm Street and then get some feedback from the city council before we go to our traffic engineer. So what you see here is the lineup that's happening on the pickup and the drop-off path, and it's working very well. It's surprising, and I've described it to people as water. When I go over there, and I've been over there a few times now, watching people drop off kids in the morning and then picking them up in the afternoon, it's very much like water. It flows, and there's a lot of movement, and people have been very patient. I have yet to hear a horn honk. I've yet to see a bird fly, at least a finger bird, fly. And people are really working together out there, and I've been really fascinated at how courteous and kind people are in this location. And I think that says a lot about our residents, but again, some of that is by design also. But there are some issues that I think people do get concerned about. You can see here where the arrow is. As things get a little bit busier and people get either a little bit more impatient, or maybe they don't want to have to park further down the road, they start parking in driveways or they start crossing sidewalks. And so they'll sit there and wait. And sometimes you can see students walking up the sidewalk, and they actually have to walk out in the road around someone that's parked in the driveway or over the sidewalk, because there's quite a bit of traffic that happens during that period of time. You start to see driveways of residents where you can kind of see this car is blocking that driveway, and that resident can't get into or out of that driveway for any period of time. It might be a half hour, it might be an hour. It's not necessarily the length of time, but we are inhibiting people being able to even access their homes at times. And we did, and I've got a video that kind of shows that a little bit. One of the things that happens, and I'm not sure that I know it's not legal. And when we've had this talk with the lieutenant and with the sheriff's department, there are a lot of U-turns, but I'm not so sure that that's not the best answer. Most of the students at the high school come from the east and they go home to the east, and going west from the high school, there's not a lot of good outlets to go through those neighborhoods. So the fact that it's working and that people are being courteous and kind right now, that's a positive, but there are a lot of U-turns, and it does create some issues with the north side of the road that I can bring up. The other thing that we see that's a little bit of a concern is there's double parking. So you'll have people that are parked on the north side of the road, and then there'll be other people saying, well, I got to wait here too. I can see my student, it's right there. So sometimes they'll actually stop right in the travel lane, and students will come actually jump in the car and they do a U-turn and take off. And so there are some things that we want to be really careful about. Now, my flash photographer, who you guys all know, he works for Extra Magazine and then Us at Nighttime, and that's Ed. You can see here how he kind of made the face so you couldn't recognize it. But this was a picture that actually, I think he sneezed or something when he took this picture, but you can see here where students are actually crossing the road and getting into vehicles when all those U-turns are coming. And so you can kind of see some of the things that are happening a little bit. But one thing I wanted to talk about Mar Vista High School, this is kind of right after the bell rings. It is amazing the amount of people that walk to this high school. This has to be, of all the Sweetwater district, this has to be the high school that has the most walkers. It's really impressive. So I just threw this picture in there. Look at all the people walking. It's really impressive when you go out there and you watch that school drain. And that doesn't count the skateboarders and the bikers. There is a lot of multimodal happening at this school, and that's really a credit to our new project. And that's why, again, the Elm Street project was to widen. Look how wide the sidewalk is now, and it really is conducive to walking. We have a lot of walkers at this school, so that's very good. But you can kind of see here what happens with some of these U-turns. There's cars kind of going every way, and they can't quite turn because, again, we have parking on the north side of the road, so you can't move over to the north side of the road to make this U-turn, and it's going to happen. The U-turns almost have to happen at this school because that's where everyone's coming from. Don't have to, but that's kind of what's happening. So that kind of gave you a feel for the U-turn. This is another thing that's happening. You kind of have students kind of, this truck is going to have to make an 8-point turn or something, and they'll eventually make it happen. But you can kind of see the challenge, the white car there. If the white car wasn't there, you could probably make the U-turn without the 3-point turn. But you can see, again, students are, one of the things we want to encourage and work with the high school is to try and have the students load on the south side, and all of this happening on the south side of the road instead of both sides. And in just a sec, and you see another U-turn happening there. And again, people are very courteous, and in some respects, it's working fairly well. But you can start to see that there's a lot of movement. And again, it doesn't happen for very long during the day, but it does happen. Just moving on to the next one. This gentleman was trying to deliver a package. The home, you'll see when he goes across the street, there was really no place to park in front of the home because there are people waiting. And so he's parking on the other side of the road where we want to have people picking kids up, and having to run his package back and then run back across the street. And then there's a few more movements that are kind of curious when he comes back, and you kind of see some of the things that are happening. He's looking at his phone. We won't, again, Ed did a good job of blurring out the license plates, thank heaven. But you can see the lady now on the left side of the road trying to park, and don't get run over by the car. And, and so again, one of the challenges of having school parking on the north side is this back and forth across what is kind of a unique situation with the U-turns and what's happening. And so the question becomes, does it make sense then to kind of limit the school park, to only allow residents to park on the north side, so we don't get the school parking on the north side and people walking back and forth? Because I think the last thing you see here is a student comes out and tries to cross the road when all this is happening, to get in a car on the other side of the road. And again, this is not uncommon, but that's kind of what's happening in our school zone. So again, I know that was maybe more information you wanted, but it was really hard to put some of those things into writing. And I thought it might be better for you guys to kind of actually see some pictures of what's happening. I think the student comes out now and has to cross the road, and it's a little bit ticklish. So,
I think you set the standard for presentations because it's probably the most visually useful presentation we've ever gotten. Or at least I have, much better than the little tiny cars from Palm Avenue.
So here's this girl
So,
now
yeah.
trying to cross this road, and so you can kind of see the real challenges of having students load on the other side. And that Jeep just pulled up, and then they'll get in, and anyway, we can go on and on. This one lasts a little bit longer, but I'll move on.
I got nervous.
Oops. So just wanted to get some direction from the city council, and what the staff is really seeking at this point is some direction and authorization, which we have under the IB municipal code. Have the city traffic engineer create a parking program on Elm Street between Corvina and Carolina to include parking on the north side of Elm Street between Corvina and Carolina shall be limited to residents between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. on days that Mar Vista High School is in session and during those school hours. It's just really, this is a school situation, not so much weekends or anything like that. But I think it's important because we don't have any parking programs now, and I know we don't want this to proliferate, and that's certainly a concern that I have. The parking program needs to be temporary in nature with a report provided to the city council after 6 months that address some of the things that we see as the safety concerns, that the parking program has not compromised safety in other locations. Have we just pushed the problem now to another street? So we want to make sure that we're looking into that. That the loss of public parking can be accommodated in other areas. In this situation, and why it's a little bit unique, the high school actually has parking lots. And a lot of these cars that are there all day long are actually teachers, and I can witness that. I saw it myself. They could actually park in this high school parking lots, but they're not because it's not as close to the front door. But the reality is there's some options here that we don't have in other parts of the community because there's some parking lots at the high school. And then the overall safety for all modes of transportation is improved. You see a lot of walkers, a lot of bicyclists, skateboarders, and a lot of people that actually drive and pick up their kids. So there's a lot of modes of transportation. Then we want to make sure that the pickups and drop-offs occur primarily on the south side. If we can get the kids to quit running across that street, that in itself would be a major accomplishment with doing something. And then, of course, the resident access needs to be improved. Ingress and egress, their driveways get blocked. Some of those kinds of things can be real challenging. And then we should have gone out there on a garbage pickup day because that's really exciting when the garbage cans are out there as well. So again, we're just seeking some input. I know I've talked to all the council members. I know it's a very big concern because this can turn into a real slippery slope. But is this unique enough that maybe we should look at at least have our traffic engineer look at some different parking programs to see if we can improve safety? And that's what we're here for tonight, is to get your feedback and input before we send our traffic engineer out. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. That was really good. I spent some time over there after after I saw this come up on the agenda to really watch it. I literally was there from the middle of the day, went back in the morning, I went in the afternoon, and I definitely think, those issues that you highlighted, Andy, are really present at those major times. But during it is a big issue of a lot of people about parking in our community. It's huge. And I wonder, one thing I did notice is that all the cars seem to be coming from the east and returning. And I'm starting to think that maybe that's because of some of the construction that's going on Palm. And the flow of traffic is definitely affecting them. And I think that I wonder if we had if the flow of traffic was not being hampered in Palm, that this might be different. So, and then there is 2-hour parking that's there already. Is it being enforced?
That's a good point. We went out and looked. There is 2-hour parking in front of 3 of the homes. And so I had some information from our public works director, Hank Levine, today. He said that at the time that was implemented, those were the only residents that agreed to have 2-hour parking in front of their homes. But I don't believe that we actively enforce the 2-hour parking in that location.
The reason why I'm asking is because I saw the same car when I went back there.
That's correct. I don't think we actively enforce that.
Okay. And then I know you said that it's a proximity thing for the teacher to get from their classroom to the end. Is there a way to make them, I know that there's a way to make them park on their lot if we had, but why is that not being enforced by the principal?
I choose to plead the Fifth Amendment. No, I'm just kidding. We've had that discussion with the principal. He has a very large staff. I don't know whether there's an inability to recognize which cars are staff members and which ones are not. I would have to work harder with the principal to see if we can get them to park in their lot. I don't have an answer for it.
Okay. And then, yeah, I think that's about all the questions.
I'm a resident on Elm Avenue, and I'm here to represent most of the residents there. The main issue here is this is something, what you saw today was actually a light day. It's actually usually very hairy, and it has nothing to do with the Palm Avenue construction. I've lived there for 17 years, and this has been going on for that long. And we don't want to see, the main thing is somebody get hurt. We didn't even speak about the elementary school students down the road. And there have been so many close calls that we don't want to wait till the day that somebody does get hurt, that a kid does get run over, and that we have to come to the council and say, wow, we could have done something beforehand. What has happened is we've also lost all the parking on the other side of the street, so it's caused more congestion. We've tried for years and years to speak with the principal. I've personally met with him several times, and he's assured me that the staff would not park there. It just doesn't work. And we're spending so much time and resources using up from the sheriff's department calling to enforce just the little 2-hour parking spots that it's at the point where they don't even want to come out anymore because it's keeping them from doing the duties they should be doing, which are much more important. That's protecting the community. So there's a lot of issues here. And again, number one is the safety issue. Not to mention, like you said, when we have deliveries, when we have the mail, even the mailman, he's got to park literally all the way down on the other side of the street. He can't find any parking lot. But most of the time, it's always the staff or the students, and it's usually even worse than what you've seen. It's not, when you come there in the morning, I know you went down in the afternoon, in the morning, it's chaos. And it's at the point where I think the sheriff's department has been making a pretty good effort to get out there when they can to try and curb some of this. Number one, like I said, this somebody's going to get hurt. That's all. It's going to come down to that, because what you saw was nothing compared to what really happens out there. That was a very mild view of that day that you went there. I don't know how many times you went out there, Andy. You probably just went out there one day and just filmed one day, right? Just picked one day.
I've been out there several times, but I go beyond.
Yeah, I actually pulled the mayor over one day to explain to him and show him how this all started years ago. But so that's mainly our concern. And as far as Mr. West, your questions as far as the Palm Avenue, this has been going on for years. Palm Avenue is not going to change anything. This is what this has to do with is basically people just, like you said, they're heading east. They don't want to go around the other way. They don't want to go west. It's hard to curve people's habits when they're doing something for so long. They've just gotten used to doing this, and it's business as usual every day. So it's very dangerous in the mornings between 7 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. and in the afternoons. And as far as the 2-hour parking, that doesn't work at all. It's nobody obeys it. It's not enforced. We can't practically enforce it, because if we do, then we're not going to have police out there watching the street. And I can't call them up all the time. My neighbors can't call them up all the time because we've become a burden. But it's a problem that we've had for years. So hopefully we can try something. I think this situation is unique enough. We're talking about the safety of our children in our community. And like I said, most of you are parents here. What if it was your child? Would you want to wait for your child to get that call?
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. We really appreciate that, and all your support, all the work you've done with the residents on feedback and changing Elm Avenue. Appreciate that, and with your patience as well. Councilmember Spriggs.
Well, I know that the city manager has been out there, and the residents have made a lot of input, and I'm just wondering about the enforcement aspect of this, and whether the solution that's being proposed with the residential, essentially with restrictions on parking on the north side during these peak times, is any more enforceable than the 2-hour limit or anything else. And what the plan is to essentially, as was very well articulated, change a culture and a pattern that everybody is sort of engaging in, including the U-turn issue, which is going to be a problem. Yes, not having cars parked there will make it easier for a U-turn to take place. It doesn't necessarily make a U-turn all that much safer. So I guess there's a question of enforcement, and are we thinking through how all of the traffic issues there and the mixed modal traffic that you talk about, the skateboards, the bikes, the pedestrians, the cars, and the mailman, and uh, whether we need to really do something more comprehensive. I'm thinking about the enforcement side. I'm thinking about speed control, maybe the kinds of thing that speed bumps do that signs don't. Um, Obviously, in a congested area like this, the standard 25 miles school zone speed limit is probably too fast. Again, I'm thinking about the kids and not wanting to have something happen, and then we all say, "Oh, we should have done this or we should have done that." Um, so I don't know. I don't know that I'm seeing or have heard a rationale for this that's really comprehensive. That addresses the whole picture and how the whole picture is going to be improved. Those are my comments.
Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you. First of all, Mr. Quinn, thank you for your advocacy on behalf of your neighborhood. To me, one of the primary things we're talking about here is behavior modification. Okay, so yes, this is a culture of it's a free for all out there. You can just do whatever you want. The fact that perhaps we're not actively enforcing the rules of the road. You can't do a U-turn there. You can't do an 8-point turn there. You can't do a 3-point turn there. So why is it happening? You can't jaywalk. So why is it happening? So again, to me, perhaps some selective enforcement on that street of this just isn't going to be allowed in this school zone. The other thing that is concerning to me, yes, this is a slippery slope. Anytime you want to do parking permits in a community, let's go talk to the people over by Bayside Elementary School. Let's ask them, would you like parking permits? I bet I know the answer. Let's ask the residents on Florida Street who live by McDonald's. And there's all kinds of parking issues over there. I have brought them personally to our city staff. There are people all over town. We've had somebody in our council chambers from over on Iris Avenue where cars are extending into other driveways, where cars are crossing across sidewalks. And yes, people have to walk out into the street. So there are some issues, some behavior modification issues that this community needs to address. As a community, what we will settle for and what we won't settle for. So I'm afraid that when we issue parking permits, that there are other pocket neighborhoods that are going to demand the same thing. So how do we address those? And I'm sure that the first 2, possibly 3 blocks of the residential area between Palm and IB Boulevard, they're going to want parking permits as well because their homes are impacted every weekend, every Friday night by the farmers market. So again, it's how do we quantify? How do we go back to the rest of the community and say, well, this neighborhood warrants it, but yours isn't so bad. And the other thing is perhaps we are not looking at a different solution for permit. So maybe we give the teachers and students, maybe they get a permit to be able to park in the lot. And if we have, and they all get it. And then if we happen to find their decaled car on the street when it actually should be in the parking lot, maybe they get a ticket. They've got an allocated space. To me, it's just amazing. It's just amazing to me. Believe me, when I worked in Old Town, if somebody had given me an allocated spot and said, Miss Bragg, this is for you to park in, I'd have been all over that. So that they're not taking advantage of what we're providing for them, what the district is providing for them, is a little bit mystifying to me. So perhaps that's something that we could look at and perhaps talk to the district about as well. If there are teachers who are quite honestly too lazy to go park in the lot and have just the, just kind of a attitude, well, yes, I'm impacting the community, but I want to be, this is easier for me. That's not okay with me. Let's be better neighbors. So those are just I just have two other comments. I did read in the staff report that we were considering adding some signage. I counted the signs between 7th and 5th on one side of the street. There's 15 already. To me, that's visual blight. So we're going to add more of those, and that we are going to allocate sheriff resources to be looking for, parking permits and decals for people who shouldn't be there or should be there is worrisome to me. I'd much rather that they be out actually fighting crime and not looking for parking decals. So these are just my concerns. I'd like to hear from our others as well. We have everybody's commented. So I'm not one to not give something a try. I would want to know what timeframes we're talking about. I certainly wouldn't want this to be included during the summer break. That makes absolutely no sense. But some of these other considerations that we're talking about, and that would include my suggestion of having teachers have a decal so that they can park in the lot and not on the street. Maybe that's a consideration as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pat.
Well, Mrs. Brad, some good points there. However, let's not go too hard on teachers. Me being, because we can't be positive that everybody that parks across that school isn't a support staff, isn't a parent volunteer. We can't, so let's not call them lazy. And I think that's a little harsh. But there's a lot of things going on. When you see parking in front of any school, people are late. They're trying to get their kid to school. Rough morning already. They woke up late. Weird things happen in front of these schools, and I've seen it. And even where that nice flow is happening, I was there watching. Cars will park before the flow to drop off their kids, so they don't have to go through the flow. I think the U-turns are 100% unacceptable. They should not be happening at all, because those U-turns what happens is, you call it a culture, but I call it, he did it, I'll do it too. And then that just manifests into this daily thing that, hey, he didn't get a ticket, I'm going to do it. And I was there on Monday after school watching, and I saw a lot of that. I did see lots of people walking, riding bikes, very safe. And this is all about safety for the kids. I mean, it's paramount that what we've done to Palm Avenue, and to Elm Avenue, we had many, many meetings to make sure that was going to be a well-oiled machine. And I think it's pretty well-oiled, but obviously there's some flaws that need to be looked at. I met with Mr. Quinn, standing on Elm Avenue, just watching cars one day. I've been down there quite often, and I definitely think something needs to be done. And sure, other parts of our community may say, hey, listen, they did it, let's get one at our area. But I think the cause of, or the reason to have these parking permits on a temporary basis, and I think 6 months may be a long window. I think let's look at it at 3 months, and it's going to be fluid. Like, is it working? Does this need to be tweaked? This needs to be tweaked. But I certainly support it for the safety of the kids, and I'm gonna stand by that. Thank you.
So I'm just listening to all the feedback, and it sounds like there's consensus that we should do something. It looks like there's consensus on a potential program, and then I've heard now maybe just to get some feedback after 3 months. What I've heard is possibly increasing enforcement. Is there a way, maybe there's something we talk about with the sheriffs? Do we have a dedicated ticketing person that, frankly, with all the violations, maybe we can make back the cost of the salary in just a week? So, I think we're all concerned about that. I think the video was I ride there all the time since I live near there. And so I say ride my bike and drive. And I avoid it actually during any time there's pickup. I avoid that area like the plague when kids are going to school or leaving. But and so I guess I'd like to move forward with this or see if there's consensus on moving forward this, just with the idea that maybe there's a potential three-month reporting back, a preliminary report, and then we have a 6-month report. We just get, and then number two, we really focus on increased in talking about improving enforcement. So that's what I've heard, and obviously, I just want to make sure that that's what I'm hearing. So, Mr. Spriggs.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're all concerned about the safety of the kids. We all want something to be done. But the question is, what's the likelihood of it working and actually creating a safer environment? And we haven't heard from the sheriff's office, and I haven't heard from the city manager yet on the number one question of enforcement. So, okay, we put a residential permit issue in there, and people continue doing the same thing. So what have we accomplished? And we don't want to see sheriff's resources diverted to traffic control or parking control or whatever. We haven't heard a solution that commonly expressed concern as well, diversion of sheriff resources. I mean, what's the strategy for changing the culture regarding where people park, the U-turns, the speed with which people go through there in their vehicles, etc.? Is it a residential parking permit by itself? I don't think so. And we, sure, we can be happy and vote on this. Give it 3 months, give it 6 months or whatever, and think we're doing something. But where's the rest of this to make sure that it's actually likely to work? Just a high probability that it's going to work. I just don't see that presented yet. I'm sorry.
Sure. Paul, you want to respond?
Yeah, the way our ordinance is written, and that's why we wanted to come to the council before we took any further step. Sorry about that. Our ordinance requires the city's traffic engineer to come out and put together a parking program. So I'm certainly not qualified to tell you what that program will look like. That's why we have the traffic engineer, and he'll come out. What I would suggest is that before we move at all, what we're looking for is authorization to engage the city's traffic engineer. Have them come take a look at it and go through the steps that Councilman Spriggs just talked about. Okay, here's what we need to do to correct that behavior. Here's what we would suggest. They may very well say, I mean, we got to listen to traffic engineers. They may come back and say, don't change a thing. What you need to do is stop the U-turns, or what you need to do is put up a fence and not let the kids cross, whatever it is. I don't want to play traffic engineer because I'm not one. But what our process is to have the city council authorize us to have the traffic engineer come take a look at what's happening out there. And he may very well say, it's more enforcement. You got to have more enforcement there. That's the solution. Or he may say, it may be a residential parking system. But we want to have a program, a traffic program out there, because you could see again in the videos, there's some situations that we need to take a hard look.
So just before, so I'm clear, Mr. Spriggs, essentially that's what we're voting on.
Not that.
I think that's a good point, and I was confused about that. And the motion that I'm going to read is literally about authorizing the city traffic engineer to coordinate the Mar Vista High School and the residents of the north side of Elm Street to implement a trial parking program and to report back to the city council after 6 months. I think all we're doing is authorizing the city traffic engineer to provide some sort of feasibility study, right? That's what we're. Right. Okay. Well, anyway, Mr. Patton, I know you had a comment.
Real quick, I'm okay with the sheriff being there. I'm okay with our resources going, because every community deserves a sheriff, no matter what. I mean, we pay a lot of money for the sheriff, and they do a great job. And I'm sure they would be happy to be part of this solution. Well, and we could hear from them when the time comes. Sure.
Okay, now we got more comments. Mrs. Bragg.
Thank you. I would support a 3-month trial, though. I think that if
Oh, sorry, repeat that.
I would support a 3-month trial period, Mr. Patton, you had talked about that. I think that if we try, it's going to be pretty obvious right away whether it's working or not. So waiting 6 months to make it permanent or whatever. But I would support a 3-month trial period as well.
Mr. Webb.
Lastly, I just want to make sure that we are including I'm all for it. I think I can buy in on the 3-month time, but I definitely want to make sure that the Mar Vista High School is included in that. And I agree that may not all be teachers. It could be, I think could be subs or anything like that that are filling those things. But I definitely think that it's a multi-pronged thing, you know, enforcement of what's there, getting some enforcement at Mar Vista High, and then getting the information back to us.
I'm hearing consensus. I mean, I'm really listening carefully. I hope, but I'm hearing consensus from all of you. And I think you're right, Mr. Spriggs. I think we were confused by the staff report versus what we're being asked to do. So let me just sort of put this out there. We would entertain a motion to authorize the city traffic engineer to coordinate the Mar Vista High School, the San Diego County Sheriffs, and the residents of the north side of Elm Street to develop a trial parking program and traffic safety management program, and report back to the city council about that. To get back, is that what we're thinking of, right? So right now, so that's what we're asking them to do, to get back us with the further details, to work at that, develop sort of a stakeholder group to work that out and get back to us on making sure that what we're recommending would really work. Yeah, right. How long would that take?
I apologize.
And that's a legal requirement. That we have to do that regardless. We just can't do something without having the traffic engineer report back.
That's correct.
Right,
Your
okay.
code requires us to have the traffic engineer
Right,
involved
okay.
in this, and we'll get it done as soon as possible. I don't have a window, but we'll do it as quick as possible.
Chris Brown is asking to speak. Are you here on behalf of the school district, or you're?
No. Probably sheriff's department. As far as the sheriff getting involved, that's great, but we don't have the facilities. But I was on patrol the other day, and they were parked in that drop-off. Nobody was in the cars. They were empty. So one car was parked and there was somebody. So I said, I'm sorry, you cannot park here more than the 5 minutes. Well, I'm dropping him off. Well, then get him out of the car. Well, I'm having a sinus problem. Get him out of the car or move it. That's it. It's very simple. Still, there's a car, no one's in it. So finally, I went up into our parking lot at the school district, the South Bay Union School District, and waited. Somebody came and got in the car. I went back down there. I'm in a patrol car. I'm in uniform. And they're not paying any attention to me at all. So, you know, it's just taking the sheriff to go down there because you saw all those U-turns. Now think about what Montgomery Montgomery High School did. They put a chain down through there so cars could not make that turn. Kids could not cross the street to get over there, and it solved the problem. So some kind of fence down through there or a chain would be ideal. So
Maybe you can remove the chains from the ugly chain link from the bayfront and then put them in the middle of the street, the rusty chain link
whatever,
fences.
but you know that.
Right. Thank you
Well,
very much,
They
Ms.
did.
Brown.
They just completely ignored us telling them to. And, you know, and as far as the traffic, because of Palm Avenue, they are now coming over to IB Boulevard. So, I mean, you're just running half of it there. But those U-turns, the kids crossing the street, the parking over there, yes, something needs to be done because it is endangering not just Mar Vista High School students, our students. And Andy Hall knows I've been fighting for this for quite a while. And I was in, have you really? But anyway, I was on that, you know, I was in on every one of the meetings for a year and a half on Elm Street. And this never came up. So this is something that needs to be addressed because I've seen it. I'm out there all the time. And I know it. That was just like Mr. Quinn said, that was light compared to what it usually is. And it just is happening, and something's going to happen really bad, and we don't want that to happen.
Thank you very much. So it sounds like what we're hearing is the issue isn't about parking passes as much as it's improving traffic safety and the safety of that area. So and getting stakeholders to work together and the traffic engineer to come up with a plan that may or may not include a trial parking program. But I think we want to hear back on that plan because I think what we realized with the roundabout is that sometimes things are counterintuitive. Sometimes what you think is going to happen, it doesn't happen. So it'd be good to get the feedback on that from a traffic engineer and more feedback from the sheriffs the high school, obviously, and residents on what to do to actually improve that. So just bear with me. I'd like an intent. So the motion could read, am I allowed to do this? To read it out like this? Okay. Okay. Make a motion to authorize the city traffic engineer to coordinate with Mar Vista High School, the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, and the residents of the north side of Elm Street to develop a traffic safety program around Elm Avenue and report back to the city council within what, 1 month or 2 months?
You better give us 60 days.
With 60 days. Well, they go back. It's summer. They go back and see you around school. Is there a motion? Is there? Okay. Great. Please vote. Thank you.
Motion carried unanimously.
Item 5.3, resolution number 2017-7799, confirming the fiscal year 2017-2018 sewer service charge rates for sanitary service as previously approved. City Manager Hall will give the report.
Mayor and council, you've seen this before. In fact, as you know, you've already approved these rates. This is just approving the resolution. We didn't even prepare much of a staff report because you've already approved it. We just need your action tonight to approve the resolution. And that's pretty much it.
Good, Madam Clerk, do you have any speaker slips?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion?
Just one quick question. Why is it back with us again? Sorry, I didn't get that.
The increases that you have in the sewer are done as you know, you approve them so that they occur in an annual basis instead of all at once. So this is just the next annual step to the next annual increase. So instead of doing 30% all at once, what we did is we broke it into 6% per year. So this is that step increase.
Any discussion? Any discussion? I would like to entertain a motion to approve resolution number 2017-7799, confirming the 6% average increase in sewer service charge fees as previously approved in ordinance number 2016-1156. Second. Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously.
Great. We have resolution number 2017-7798, authorizes the transfer of $130,791 appropriated for pump station number 10 FY 16-17 to a new capital project at 500 Block Benito Avenue sewer main upsize and award a contract to Charles King Company to perform the 500 Block Benito Avenue sewer main upsize emergency work at a cost of $92,070.40. Public Works Director Levine will give the report.
Mayor, council members, this is a request to transfer, as you mentioned earlier, funds that were appropriated by you 2 years ago for the installation of emergency generator upgrade on pump station 10, which is over on the Bayside Elementary or Bayside neighborhood of your Bayview neighborhood of your city. To a project that has come to our attention that is a much higher priority and in my opinion is an emergency request. And that is there is a pump station that is on the pump station 6 on the intersection of Cala and 5th Street near Rainbow Drive, which is right in this area here. And from there, it pumps waste by a force main down to where you see the first yellow dot on Bonito. That line is fairly shallow that comes off of that force main down Bonito, and it is undersized. I've known it was and been undersized for the last year or so, but I did not realize until the recent study that was done by Michael Baker International as they were doing the sewer master plan. And their model shows that when that line is at peak flow with all of Bernardo Shores in place, that we will most likely flood or discharge into the street. I don't want to wait until they are full capacity. And so I'm asking you to authorize resolution in the staff report to award this, transfer those funds from the generator, pump station 10 to this project, and to authorize us to use my King, the contractor I got in there, King, Charles King, thank you, ma'am, to start construction on this and upsize this pipe from a current 6-inch pipe to a 10-inch pipe. So you can see it's substantially undersized in order to meet that capacity.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Any comments, questions? Councilmember Bragg?
Thank you, Mr. Levine. So what happens to the other project? Does that become down? It just goes down into the next, it just goes in a queue and will be the next project up?
We attempted to put a generator in, a replacement generator on that lot, and we've run into substantial APCD problems. And I've just been pushing it off until probably the master plan. I'm able to have an alternative way to provide emergency power to that station once we know the upgrade, the master plan. So it seemed to me it was not prudent to continue to spend money on that generator for now, and it's been sitting there for the 2 years.
Okay. Also, what will be the length of this project, and how will you, what will happen while the project is commencing? And if you would talk a little bit about notification to the community, if there's any
Sure.
consideration in that as well.
Yep. The project will probably take a couple weeks. While that is on happening, there'll be a bypass system, so they will bypass the area that's under construction. And obviously that has to be a no leak system, but we do it. All of sewer projects, or many of our sewer projects, require bypassing. We did that on Elm Avenue project, bypassing. It's not a complicated situation, and it shouldn't affect the flow from the homeowners.
Okay, and the notification that the homeowners will receive?
Sure. Part of their contract is to provide a notification to the homeowners that we're going to be constructing there. There'll be a letter sent to the mirror door hangers, knock on the door, whatever.
Okay, perfect.
It's
Thank
part
you.
of the contract.
All right, thank you, Mr. Levine.
Mr. West?
Hank, okay, so you said it'd take a couple weeks. When do you expect to start?
The contractor told us if we approved tonight, they would start by the end of May.
Okay, what is the implications for the traffic based on this work?
Well, I don't know the traffic control plan that they will implement, but they will still have access through there. I may have to be some flagging done, as part of it.
And is it going to be, the reason why I'm with all the traffic that's going on there, that's another traffic issue that could come up very quickly. I mean, is it so emergent that we can't wait till we're all done with the inlet on Palm there? Can we wait till that's done and then start this so we don't have another traffic issue in the same area?
That should be done May.
We
15th.
expect the Palm Avenue section between 7th and Highway 75 to be open in a couple, 3 weeks.
Okay, so it shouldn't impact it at all.
We would hope so. But it is also not affecting Rainbow. And in fact, some of the neighbors might appreciate the people not being able to divert down their street to bypass the intersections.
True. Good point, Hank. I definitely am. They will probably like that, because I know I've actually seen people say when a guy drove down the street, he was like, there were many 4-letter words being used. Let's put it that way. But I just don't want another. If we can time these a little bit so we can have a good dance in our community, so we're not doing two things at once, would be a great thing for the community.
I think it'll phase pretty smoothly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Levine. I appreciate to knowing what goes on to our neighbors to the south and their lack of due diligence. I really appreciate your foresight and always active planning. Every time I'm doing a radio interview about the sewage issue, I always talk about the fact that our city actively does this all the time. So I want to thank you and your staff for really being on it. It's really helpful for me. And I know our council to see that and just how much work it is to maintain a sewer system. And you mentioned it's not complicated, and it isn't for you. Apparently, for the 2 million people that live south of, one of the largest cities in Mexico, it seems to be very complicated. So anyway, maybe we can get you working as a consultant over there. Anyway, which is why we always say that you and your team we always donate your services and time to when they need help, because we know you guys are really on it. So thank you. And I see you and your staff doing that. So anyway, with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2017-7798, authorizing the transfer of $130,791 appropriated for pump station number 10 FY1617 to a new capital project, and award a contract to Charles King Company to perform the 500 block Benito Avenue sewer main upsize emergency work at a cost of $92,070.40. Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Last but not least, item 5.5, adoption of resolution number 2017-7800, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the San Diego Humane Society to provide the specialized services of animal control and care in the city of Imperial Beach. Fire Chief French will give the report.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Tonight we're bringing before you a proposal for an animal control contract. Animal control is, an important part of our city, and we get a lot of complaints and things about it sometimes. And right now with Chula Vista, we have 4 days worth of coverage, and it wouldn't cover the weekend. So when the contract came up, we've always been looking at other avenues to pursue. And this year, when the contract came up, we finally had somebody that was interested in, giving us a bid on services other than Chula Vista. And what we've been looking at with this is 7-day coverage. So with this proposal, we got bids from the San Diego Humane Society and the city of Chula Vista, and we're based on the same, parameters. So we're not looking at apples to oranges. We're looking at apples to apples. And with this proposal, it would be 7 days of coverage with the San Diego Humane Society. And right now we're looking at $279,000, which right now we pay about $260 with the city of Chula Vista. So from 4 days coverage to 7 days. With the San Diego Humane Society today, we have Chief Steve McKinnon, and he's here to answer any questions that you have about the proposal or about the San Diego Humane Society.
Great. Are there any, anybody like to answer questions? Mr. Patton?
The hours, 7 days a week, what would be the hours?
The hours, we're looking at what, 8 to 6, and we could also have flexibility in those if we have events or later in the day, or if we see problems later in the day or earlier in the day, they are flexible with those hours.
Maybe the chief, you want to just come on up? So you don't have to. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Yes, our officers will be working a 10-hour day, and as during our negotiations, we want to really do that flexibility. So if there are issues very early in the morning or later on in the evening, we've kind of set up some protocols, informal protocols, where you can flex that. Also during maybe major events on a weekend where you want a second officer, we have arrangements to be able to do that as well.
That's great. Do you have a hotline number? Is there a direct line number for our citizens to reach?
One thing that we'll want to do between now and the time that we'd have to actually start is to have a campaign to inform people to add that information to your website. to provide that to the sheriff's department, the fire department, and to your city staff. But we do have we have a 24-hour line, but we also have our dispatch center where typically the majority of the calls would go to, where our dispatchers see those calls, document that, and dispatch the office for the area.
Where's that dispatch at?
That's at our San Diego campus.
San Diego. And then beach access. Now that we've lost a little access for dogs north of Carnation Street. You're familiar
A little
with
bit.
the area? Okay, so
I'll get more.
our far north area
Yes.
of our beach.
You know, the
that's-
Coronado Beach.
Right. But from north of Palm Avenue is
Oh, right.
ours.
Okay.
And then there's other areas south of Imperial Beach Boulevard where, dogs need to be on the leash. And then in between Palm Avenue, Ivy Boulevard, no dogs at all. What is going to be your beach access and training for anybody driving on the beach? Can you explain? Let me know about.
One of the designations that you've asked us to have is to have a four-wheel drive vehicle, so we could drive on the beach. And I think as far as what the protocols would be, well, we're going to follow what the city wants us to do. My understanding is from the lifeguard, typically on weekends, they do have a lot of animal calls on the beach, people walking their dogs inappropriately. And this northern area that you're talking about, I guess, is a real problem area that they have some concerns with. But we'd want to work with them even prior to us coming on board to learn what those issues are and then follow what your protocols are.
No, I'm sure you have a four-wheel drive.
Mhm.
That's not quite my question. Is the driver, what training does he have or she have to actually drive on a crowded beach? I was a lifeguard on the beach for many years, and one of my pet peeves is when I'll see another vehicle driving on the beach too fast, too crowded. They shouldn't be doing that. So I really think, working with the lifeguards and getting somebody trained that has driven on the beach, because kids don't realize that there's a truck on the beach. Why would there be a truck on the beach?
I agree. Yes, we'll definitely work with the lifeguards. There are actually some training programs through the California Post and other areas that recognize that as a problem. Actually, one of my agencies that I worked with was a beach community, and we had four-wheel drive vehicles that we went on, so we had a specific training program for that. Definitely recognize those concerns. I've heard of incidents on the beach where poorly trained drivers are actually making it more hazardous for the people. We would want to do that. So, like I said, we'll definitely be working with your staff to make sure that that's all in place.
Like, for instance, you stop, you make a contact with somebody, and you just drive off, and you don't do that. You stop, make a contact, you get out of your vehicle, you look under your tires, you get back in.
Absolutely.
Those are all the protocols, and I think like Miramar College offers driver training for, I know that for lifeguards. That's something that's a big concern, because all it takes is, just,
A lot of liability
one
involved.
thing,
I
one
agree.
thing happening.
I agree.
So that's pretty much what I'm asking, and we welcome you, because I know there's a lot of people with, I get calls and emails at nighttime about dogs barking all night long, and I'm sure in the field you're in,
We get a few calls.
you get a
yes.
few calls. So let's take care of those.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you. Thank you for being here as well. And Chief French, thank you. This has been an ongoing issue in our community, is dealing with our animal control. So maybe you're going to bring a whole nother perspective to this. I did have some questions about the location of the San Diego facility versus the location of the Chula Vista facility. It's something that our residents are going to have to be schooled in, that there's a change. And so I wanted to hear what your marketing campaign and outreach would be. And you heard earlier that we're going to have an open house event here. I think it was May 11th or the 18th. But, if you could plan to be there to help educate the community, because it's a big change.
Mhm.
So the drive time is going to be a little bit different. And then if you would also address the end of day reunification efforts that you have, which I found really compelling, because it will cut down on impound fees. So how long will that will those hours be? Because you said your hours were from 8 to 6, but let's say I don't get home until after 6 and I find that my animal is missing and it's here, and what kind of additional time would be allowed at the end of the day, perhaps, so that people returning home would be able to access your facility. And then also you talked about a little bit about special events, and I know that we have a problem, as every community does, when there's fireworks and animals are scared and they run away. So that's not happening maybe till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So on those special event days, what kind of resources would you be bringing to our community?
Well, let's see, you've offered me a few questions here. Let me see if I can field each one of them. Absolutely. Well, maybe kind of work my way backwards. Yeah, 4th of July, we typically have more officers on. Typically, we have officers that work into the evening hours at all the communities that we provide services to, specifically for that problem. And we get calls from people who, hey, I have a scared dog under my porch or something, just because of that. Luckily, the majority of those dogs get returned fairly quickly within 24 hours or so. The residents, or I should say the dog owners, realize that their dog has escaped because of the loud noises, and we can get them rehomed fairly quickly. You're asking about the kind of what the method is at the end of the day. We're working with your staff to set up a kind of a temporary holding area. So when the officer during the day captures a roaming dog, he'll, rather than transport him to San Diego campus, which obviously would take a lot of time away from the city, that we bring them to the holding facility, and then that dog could be released anytime during the day. The officer would be called, hey, we have a resident here. The officer can come back, take enforcement action if that's needed, do education and return the dog at the end of the day. Unless during the day we capture a dog that's injured, we'd obviously make the transport immediately. At the end of the day, any dogs that we've captured would go back with the officer at San Diego campus. Now, when a resident returns home after 6 o'clock, our campus is closed, so they wouldn't be able to pick up their dog at 8 or 9 o'clock because the dog wouldn't be available to be released. We're open during the day up till 6 o'clock. They come the next day and make that pickup. I know the staff report does address a little bit to that concern, with Chula Vista is 4 miles away. We're about, depending on traffic, it could be 20 minutes or it could be an hour to get up there. We've kind of talked about that quite a bit between ourselves and your staff, and saying, well, maybe that'd be a little bit of incentive for them to kind of track their dog a little bit more closely, work with us a little bit more as far as making that not happen a second time. The main thing is we recognize that during the day, we think an awful lot of the dogs can be go back to their owner at that point and not have to make that transport, not have to make that inconvenience. And I think it'll probably work out pretty well.
Okay, when you say work out pretty well, and Chief French, you may want to chime in on this. So we were, even though it is an increase in cost, but we were talking about with perhaps this program being very successful, that there would be some cost savings in the impound fees as well. So I think that was part of the, you alluded to it in your staff report. So obviously that's something that we're interested in. And then the other component that you hadn't addressed yet was outreach for the community, because it is a big change. And I was wondering how soon this would go into an effect, and then how quickly you would be able to respond, and what the community could do to support having the San Diego Humane Society in our community now. I know, because a lot of your offices do a lot of fundraising as far as donations of food and blankets and those kinds of things. So and the community would like to know that.
Absolutely. I think you can anticipate in the almost the immediate future, once if you're inclined to approve this, is that you're gonna see 3 sets of meetings. One set of meetings is for us to come back and meet with the city staff to work on specifically what you're talking about, to work on what changes we suggest for your website so they can make those connections, work with the sheriff's department, fire department, things like that, as far as protocols, working with the lifeguards, working out all those mechanisms. We'll do a set of internal meetings to talk about what you're talking about as far as a media campaign, getting the word out, and work with your staff to figure out what's the best way to get that message out, to meet with local media. You're mentioning an event coming up on May 11th. I think we'll make every effort to try to make some type of presence there. We'll talk to your staff a little bit more about that and how we can make that work. So we have right now a 2-month window get that word out as much as possible. And then the communications will continue on beyond that. My understanding is you've got a lot of different community events going on where we'd love to be able to have booths. We have a community engagement department that does this throughout the county, and we'd love to be able to have that presence where they start recognizing our vehicle, they start recognizing our officers, that they feel that comfort level that they can call us on and ask questions about barking dogs, but any type of animal complaint, behavior issues, training issues, we want to be able to do that. So I think it's going to be really important these first 2 months to set that all out, start getting that word out well before July 1st, so that they feel comfortable that, okay, there's a change coming, and hopefully they'll be excited about the opportunity of having us here 7 days a week and be able to respond on a pretty regular basis.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKinnon, for being here. I think this is a great opportunity for Imperial Beach to really have much better. I mean, almost every household here has animals and mainly dogs. So this is really great. I really think the idea of trying to reunite the animal with the owner is, and that being the premium being placed on that is really an upgrade for us. And the 7-day attention, I think, is also going to be an upgrade. You had mentioned training or education of animal owners, and I'd like you to just talk a little bit more about that. One of the things that I think I'm certainly interested in is is more adherence to the leashing requirements that are part of our city ordinance structure. More attention to owners picking up after their dogs, and well, primarily dogs, using the blue envelopes that are available all over, and we're just seeing really that kind of behavior not changing the way it really should. And so, is there any role for the Humane Society regarding owner education, regarding appropriate dog culture and training and leashing in the areas where it's required and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Our clear philosophy is we do much more education than enforcement. Enforcement is the last tool on our toolbox, so to speak. And the vast majority of our officers' interactions with the community is education, to walk them through how to appropriately walk the dog, how to appropriately set up their home, educate people about what the law requires as far as shelter, as far as water, as far as being able to keep the dogs under control. We have a whole program as far as addressing barking dogs, where we have a number of steps that we take, and it's very, very rare that we'd ever have to go to enforcement, because we take all these steps, which also include education, that we'll go visit the house to try to figure out, why is this dog barking? Is there a reason for that? And work with them. We also offer a number of just general education programs where people have just gotten a puppy and they want to understand how to properly train the puppy so they don't have problems in the future. So all those will be available. But I think what you're focused on as far as leashing, picking up after dogs, and just being a good pet owner in your neighborhood, all those things where the officers get those complaints, the very first thing is we work with the owner, educate them, and the last thing we want to do is do enforcement. And you see that's our consistent philosophy with all the communities.
Thank you, Mr. West.
I'll be quick. I am very excited for the San Diego Humane Society to come down here, because in many ways, I think it's going to be a complete change of just the entire principles, because I believe in what the San Diego Humane Society does. As a guy who has trained 4 dogs from the canine to canine good citizen and beyond, I know how good you guys, how good the Humane Society is, and I appreciate it. And I look forward to you working with us. And Jerica, I expect you to be doing a little bit of this as well. You, as a owner, as a worker there, and a director, I'm very excited about this. So thank you very much for coming down here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I want to commend the staff report. It makes it a lot simpler for us to evaluate, especially the additional services. I'm a big fan of the Humane Society, especially with Project Wildlife. I love the idea of pause for low-income families. I think that's an important component. So appreciate the ability to sort of just get at the facts and evaluate the both programs. So thanks for your very articulate discussion of the services you provide. Very helpful, and I think it's a good indication that we're going to have great service. So we
Yeah, we're
appreciate
very
it.
excited about it. We're really
With
looking
that,
forward to it.
Yeah,
yes.
can I add just a couple things? One, we certainly want to thank the city of Chula Vista.
Right.
They've been a great partner with us. We still do a lot of things with them. They just run a slightly different program. And we really, again, like the emphasis that the city council was mentioning on reunification and some of the things, just the kind of the different scope that the Humane Society brings to us than perhaps a municipal might. The other thing is they're not new to us. We work with the Humane Society a lot right now, especially the lifeguards. They come down and help us with bird issues and a lot of other things. So they're not new in our community, and they provide these services to a lot of other communities. This isn't an experiment with them. They do it a lot. So just wanted to add a couple of those things as
Right.
important factors.
With that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2017-7800, authorizing the city manager to enter an agreement with the San Diego Humane Society to provide the specialized services of animal control and care in the city of Imperial Beach.
So moved. Second.
Please vote. All right.
We're like sleep.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, regular meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.